The message arrived at exactly 1400 hours, and it changed everything humanity had ever known about their place in the universe. Admiral Sam stood on the bridge of the TSS Ironclad, the flagship of the Terran Defense Fleet. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. The ship floated silently above Neptune, running standard patrol routes through the outer solar system. It was supposed to be a quiet day. It was supposed to be like any other day. Then the communication officer, a young woman named, turned from her station with a face as white as snow. Her hands were shaking when she spoke. "Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission. It is coming from beyond the outer colonies. The signature matches Dominion channels." The bridge went silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. The Dominion was the oldest and most powerful empire in the known galaxy. They controlled over 300 worlds across dozens of star systems. Their civilization had existed for 12,000 years before humanity had even discovered fire. No species had ever defeated them in war. No species had ever even come close. Felt his stomach tighten, but his voice remained calm. "Put it on the main screen." The screen flickered and then a face appeared. It was not a human face. There were tall beings with deep purple skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Their mouths were thin and lipless, and when they spoke, their voices sounded like stones grinding together. "I am High Commander of the Dominion," the creature said. "I speak with the authority of the Eternal Emperor himself. Your species has expanded too far and too fast. You threaten the balance of power that has existed for 10,000 years. This will not be permitted." Said nothing, he simply watched and listened. "You have 30 standard days to surrender all colonial territories and submit to Dominion rule. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your leaders will stand before our courts. If you refuse, we will reduce you to ash and scatter your people to the cosmic winds. You have been warned." The screen went dark. For a long moment nobody spoke, then looked at her admiral with fear in her eyes. "Sir, what do we do?" Stared at the empty screen. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. He thought about his who had never known war. He thought about the billions of human beings across 12 star systems who were about to learn that the universe was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. "We go home," he said quietly, "and we tell them what is coming." 3 days later, the Terran Council assembled in Geneva. It was the largest gathering of human leaders in history. Representatives from every colony world, every space station, and every outpost filled the great hall. The air was thick with tension and fear. Secretary General Cole stood at the podium. He was a short man with kind eyes and a soft voice, but there was steel beneath his gentle appearance. He had been a soldier once long ago, before he became a diplomat. "You have all seen the message," he said. "They have given us a choice: surrender or die." The hall remained silent. People were afraid to breathe. "Our intelligence tells us that the fleet numbers over 50,000 warships. Our entire military consists of 132 combat vessels. Their technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of our own. By every measure, by every calculation, we cannot win this fight." A representative from the Mars colony stood up. His name was Henry Blake and his voice was shaking. "Then what choice do we have? We cannot fight them. We cannot outrun them. Perhaps surrender is the only path that leads to survival." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people nodded. Others looked at the floor in shame. Then a woman stood up at the back of the hall. Her name was Dr. Lisa Tran, and she was not a politician. She was an engineer from a small mining colony called New Montana, located in a distant star system most Earth citizens had never heard of. Nobody knew why she was there. Nobody had invited her to speak. "May I say something?" she asked. Cole looked at her with curiosity. "Please." Lisa Tran walked down the aisle toward the podium. She was not a soldier. She was not a leader. She was a small woman with messy hair and grease stains on her jacket, but when she spoke, her voice carried across the entire hall. I grew up on a colony world at the edge of human space. My parents were miners. My grandparents were farmers who left Earth with nothing but hope in their hearts. Every generation of my family has faced impossible odds. Every generation has been told they could not survive. And every generation has proven the doubters wrong. She turned to face the crowd. They see us as children. They think we will kneel because we are young and weak and afraid. But they do not understand what we are. They do not understand that humanity was built by people who refused to accept the impossible. We crossed oceans in wooden ships. We cured diseases that killed millions. We reached for the stars when everyone said it could not be done. Her voice grew stronger. If we surrender today, we do not just lose our freedom. We lose everything that makes us human. We lose the spirit that carried us from caves to the stars. We become nothing more than slaves waiting to die. She looked directly at Secretary General Cole. I am just an engineer from a mining colony. I have no army, I have no fleet, but I will not kneel, and I do not believe I am alone. The hall erupted. People rose to their feet. Voices shouted in agreement. The fear that had filled the room moments before transformed into something else, something fierce, something unbreakable. Cole raised his hand for silence. When the noise died down, he spoke. We will take a vote. Every representative will cast their decision, surrender or resist. The voting took less than an hour. When the results came in, even Cole was surprised. Every single colony, every single station, every single outpost, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. That night, Cole broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. The elder species watched from their distant worlds. The High Commander observed from his flagship. Everyone expected fear. Everyone expected desperation. Instead, they heard a simple declaration. We did not come this far to kneel. We did not build everything we have built to give it away to those who threaten us with destruction. You have declared war on humanity. Now you will learn what that means. Across 12 star systems, 8 billion human beings heard their leader speak. And in that moment, something ancient woke up in the human spirit. Something that had carried their ancestors across every obstacle. Something that refused to die. They had made a terrible mistake. They had given humanity something it needed more than weapons or ships or technology. They had given humanity a reason to fight together. And that was something the galaxy had never seen before. 28 days remained before the deadline, and humanity began to move in ways the galaxy had never witnessed. Admiral Sam returned to the TSS Ironclad and immediately called his senior officers to the war room. Commander Kate was the first to arrive. She was a sharp woman in her 40s with red hair cut short and a mind that could calculate battle strategies faster than most computers. She had served under for 15 years, and she knew him well enough to read the worry behind his calm expression. We have 132 warships, she said, spreading holographic maps across the table. They have at least 50,000. Even if we fight perfectly, we lose. Nodded slowly. Then we cannot fight perfectly. We have to fight differently. He turned to face the other officers gathered in the room. They have never lost because they have never faced an enemy like us. They fight wars with their military. Their civilians stay home and wait for victory. They do not understand what happens when an entire species decides to resist. Lieutenant Commander Danny Vance stepped forward. He was young for his rank, with dark skin and bright eyes that always seemed to be looking for trouble. What exactly are you planning, Admiral? Smiled for the first time in days. I am planning to show them what humanity really looks like when we are backed into a corner. The orders went out within hours. Every ship in the Terran fleet was assigned a new position. Defense networks were activated around every colony world. but the truly remarkable orders went to civilians. Dr. Lisa Tran received her assignment on New Montana. She had returned home after her speech in Geneva, expecting to wait out the war like everyone else. Instead, she found a message from Admiral himself. "We need weapons," the message said. "We need ships. We need everything you can build. I do not care if it is military grade. I care that it works. You have 3 weeks." Lisa looked around her engineering workshop. It was filled with mining equipment, cargo haulers, and industrial machinery. None of it was designed for war. All of it could be changed. She called her team together. There were 47 engineers and mechanics on New Montana, most of them people who had never fired a weapon in their lives. When she explained what they needed to do, some of them laughed, some of them cried, but none of them refused. "We are going to turn cargo ships into warships," Lisa told them. "We are going to mount weapons on mining platforms. We are going to build things they have never seen before." A young mechanic named Chris raised his hand. "How do we even know what to build? We are not weapons designers." Lisa smiled grimly. "Neither were our ancestors when they faced lions with wooden spears. They figured it out, so will we." Across human space, similar scenes played out on every world. Farmers on agricultural colonies began stockpiling food for siege conditions. Factory workers started producing ammunition and armor plating. Teachers and doctors and shopkeepers volunteered for emergency training programs. Humanity was not preparing its military for war. Humanity was preparing everyone for war. On Earth, Sergeant Dawson ran the largest civilian training program in history. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had spent 30 years in the Terran Marines. She had never expected to spend her retirement teaching librarians and accountants how to fight. "They prefer orbital bombardment," she told her trainees. "They do not like ground combat. They think it is beneath them, but if any of their soldiers reach our surface, we need to be ready." A nervous young man raised his hand. His name was Peter Grant, and he had been a high school history teacher 3 weeks ago. "Sergeant, most of us have never even seen a real weapon before. How are we supposed to fight alien soldiers?" Dawson looked at him with hard eyes. "You are supposed to fight them because there is no one else. You are supposed to fight them because your families are behind you. You are supposed to fight them because giving up means the death of everything you love." She paused and softened her voice slightly. "I will not lie to you. Many of us will die. But every enemy soldier we take down is one less soldier attacking our homes. Every minute we hold the line is one more minute for others to fight back. That is what war is. It is not about winning every battle. It is about refusing to lose the ones that matter." Meanwhile, Commander Danny Vance was on a mission that no one else knew about. He had taken a small stealth vessel beyond the borders of human space, deep into the neutral territories where forgotten species survived in the shadows of greater powers. His target was a species called the. They had once controlled a small empire of 20 worlds until they destroyed them 300 years ago. Now they were refugees, scattered across dozens of space stations and asteroid colonies, living on the scraps the galaxy threw away. Vance found their leader on a broken station orbiting a dying star. His name was, and he was old even by standards. His people had gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to hold centuries of sorrow. "Why would they help humanity?" asked. "We helped no one when our own worlds burned. We hid and survived and forgot how to fight." Vance leaned forward. "Because they are coming for us now, and if they destroy humanity, they will never stop. They will hunt down every species that might one day threaten them. They will never be safe. No one will ever be safe." Was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly. 300 years we have waited. 300 years we have dreamed of revenge but never believed it possible. You humans are young and foolish, and you will probably die." He stood up slowly, and something fierce burned in his ancient eyes. but you are fighting back. That is more than any species has done in 10,000 years. Perhaps it is time they remembered how to fight as well. Back on the ironclad, Admiral received reports from across human space. Civilian ships were being armed. Ground forces were being trained. Secret alliances were forming in the darkness between stars. Kate handed him a data pad with the latest numbers. We have 4,000 civilian vessels volunteering for combat duty. Most of them are cargo haulers and mining ships. They do not stand a chance against warships. Took the pad and looked at the numbers. 4,000 ships crewed by farmers and engineers and teachers, people who had never been soldiers, people who were volunteering to die. They know the odds, he said quietly. They are coming anyway. Kate looked at her admiral with something between admiration and fear. What are we becoming, sir? Watched the star field through the bridge windows. Somewhere out there, the largest invasion fleet in galactic history was gathering. Somewhere out there, 50,000 warships were preparing to crush humanity like an insect. We are becoming what we have always been, he said. We are becoming survivors. We are becoming the species that refuse to die. He turned back to the tactical displays. And they have no idea what that means. 21 days remained. The storm was gathering, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy something it had never seen before. 15 days remained when the first ships crossed into human space. Admiral Sam had positioned his fleet near the system, the closest star to Earth, and the first target the enemy would need to capture. He stood on the bridge of the ironclad and watched his sensors as 200 warships dropped out of hyperspace. 200 ships against his 47 vessels. The odds were terrible, but they were better than what was coming later. This was just the scout fleet. The main armada was still gathering beyond the outer territories. Kate stood beside him, her face calm but her hands tight on the railing. They are forming a standard battle line, shields at maximum, weapons charging. Nodded, they fought the same way every species in the galaxy fought. They lined up their ships in neat formations and exchanged fire until one side broke. It was honorable. It was traditional. It was predictable. Signal all ships, said. Execute pattern Omega. The human fleet scattered in every direction. On the flagship, High Commander watched his sensors with confusion. The human ships were not forming a battle line. They were not preparing to exchange fire. They were running in seemingly random patterns, breaking into small groups of 3 or 4 vessels and disappearing behind asteroids and debris fields. They are fleeing, one of his officers reported. Should we pursue? Considered for a moment. Yes, hunt them down. Show them that running only delays the inevitable. The fleet broke formation to chase the scattered human ships. It was exactly what it wanted. Captain Ben Torres commanded the TSS Defiance, a small destroyer that had seen better days. He had served in the Navy for 20 years and he had never been in a real battle until today. His ship was old. His crew was scared. But when he saw the ships break their formation, he smiled. They took the bait, he said to his crew. All hands prepare for attack run. The Defiance and 2 other destroyers had hidden behind a large asteroid. When 4 cruisers passed by in pursuit of another group, the human ships emerged from cover and opened fire. The shields were powerful, but they were designed to absorb damage from the front. The human attack came from behind and above, striking weak points that the enemy had not bothered to protect. 2 cruisers took critical damage before they could even turn their weapons around. Similar attacks happened across the battlefield. Human ships would run, hide, and then strike from unexpected angles. They refused to stand and fight in the traditional way. They refused to play by the rules the galaxy had followed for 10,000 years. High Commander watched his fleet take losses it had never expected. 30 ships destroyed, then 40, then 50. His forces still outnumbered the humans, but the battle was not going according to plan. "What is this?" he demanded. "This is not how war is fought." His tactical officer looked at the sensor data with growing concern. "They are not fighting to win, Commander. They are fighting to hurt us. Every attack targets our engines and weapon systems. They are not trying to destroy us. They are trying to cripple us." Finally understood. The humans knew they could not win this battle. They knew they could not stop the invasion. But they could make sure that every victory cost the Dominion dearly. They could make sure that by the time the war was over, there would be nothing left worth conquering. "These creatures are insane," he whispered. On the ironclad, Admiral coordinated the battle from his command chair. His ship had taken 2 direct hits, but the damage was manageable. Around him, his crew worked with desperate efficiency. "Sir, the Defiance is taking heavy fire," reported from her station. "Captain Torres reports critical damage to life support." His face remained stone. "Tell him to fall back." "He says he cannot, sir. Enemy ships are blocking his retreat. He is requesting permission to continue his attack run." Closed his eyes for just a moment. Ben Torres was a good man. He had a wife on Earth. He had children who were waiting for him to come home. "Granted," said quietly. "Tell him to give them hell." The Defiance plunged into the heart of the formation, weapons firing in every direction. The small destroyer took hit after hit, its hull breaking apart under the assault. But it did not stop. It kept firing until its last weapon was destroyed. It kept flying until its engines finally died. Ben Torres died with his hand on the controls, steering his broken ship directly into the side of a cruiser. The explosion destroyed both vessels. Across the battlefield, human crews watched the Defiance die, and instead of breaking their spirit, it made them fight harder. Lieutenant Amy commanded a small frigate called the Starling. She had been planning to retreat when she saw the Defiance go down. Instead, she turned her ship around and charged back into the fight. "For Torres," she said to her crew, "for all of them." The battle lasted 4 more hours. When it finally ended, the scout fleet had lost 63 ships. Humanity had lost 19. But more importantly, the remaining vessels were too damaged to continue their advance. They retreated back beyond human space to repair and regroup. High Commander transmitted a report to the Eternal Emperor himself. His words were careful, but the message was clear. "The humans fight differently than any species we have encountered. They do not follow our rules. They do not fear death the way other species do. They turn every battle into a war of attrition. If we continue with our current strategy, victory will cost us far more than we anticipated." The Emperor's response came within hours. "Then we will send everything. Crush them so completely that no species ever dares to resist us again." The main armada began moving toward human space, 2,000 warships carrying enough firepower to burn entire star systems. The scout fleet had been a test. The real invasion was coming. But something else was happening too. News of the battle have spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. The elder species who had dismissed humanity as doomed began whispering among themselves. The scattered victims of conquest began to hope for the first time in centuries. On a broken space station orbiting a dying star, received the news from Commander Danny Vance. "You actually won," said, his ancient voice filled with disbelief. Vance shook his head. "We survived, we hurt them. That is not the same as winning. It is more than anyone has done in 10,000 years." Stood and looked at the stars through a cracked viewport. "My people have hidden for 3 centuries. We told ourselves we were being wise. We told ourselves survival was enough." He turned back to Vance. "Perhaps it is time to stop hiding. Perhaps it is time to remember that survival without honor is not really living at all." The fleet began to gather. 300 ships, old and battered but still capable of fighting. They would not reach human space in time for the main battle, but they were coming. And they were not the only ones. Across the galaxy, other species began to stir. The broken and the conquered, the forgotten and the afraid. They had lived under the shadow of for thousands of years. Now, for the first time, they saw something they had never seen before. They saw a species that refused to kneel. And that changed everything. 7 days remained when the sky above Earth turned dark with enemy ships. Admiral Sam stood on the bridge of the damaged ironclad and watched his sensors fill with red contacts. 2,000 warships emerged from hyperspace near the lunar orbit. They spread across the void like a swarm of metal locusts, blocking out the stars themselves. He had 112 ships left after the battle of 112 against 2,000. The mathematics of death were simple and cruel. Kate stood beside him, her face pale but her voice steady. They are forming an attack formation. Lead elements will reach weapons range in 40 minutes. Looked at the tactical display. He had positioned his fleet between the moon and Earth, the last line of defense for the. Behind him, 8 billion people waited and prayed. Behind him, everything humanity had ever built hung in the balance. "Signal all ships," he said. "We hold the line as long as we can, make every shot count, make them pay for every inch of space." The first wave of ships surged forward. Their weapons lit up the darkness with purple fire. The human fleet answered with everything they had. The TSS ironclad shook as enemy fire struck its shields, gripped his command chair as alarms screamed across the bridge. His ship was old and tired, already damaged from the previous battle. It would not survive much longer. But it did not need to survive. It only needed to fight. Lieutenant Commander reported from her station, her voice cracking with static. "Shield generators failing. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Engine core is destabilizing." Watched another human ship explode on his display. The TSS Reliance, a light cruiser with a crew of 200, gone in an instant. Then another ship died, and another. "Transfer all remaining power to weapons," he ordered. "If we are going down, we are taking as many of them with us as we can." The ironclad continued firing even as it fell apart around him. Saw his crew dying at their stations, saw sparks and fire consuming the bridge, saw the walls buckling under the assault. But he did not leave his post. He could not leave, not while there was still something to fight for. Then a direct hit struck the engine core, and the ironclad went dark. Kate found herself floating in zero gravity, surrounded by debris and bodies. Emergency lights flickered weakly. The main power was gone. The weapons were silent. The flagship of the Terran fleet was dead. But she was not. She pulled herself to a working communication terminal and broadcast on all channels. "This is Commander. Admiral is down. I am assuming command of the fleet. All ships continue defensive operations." There were only 63 human ships still fighting. The Armada had lost less than 100 vessels. The battle was already over. Everyone knew it, but no one stopped fighting. On the surface of Earth, Secretary General Cole watched the battle from a fortified bunker beneath Geneva. The screens showed the dying fleet, the endless waves of enemy ships, the slow destruction of everything humanity had built in space. His advisors urged him to surrender. They begged him to contact thee and accept any terms. They told him that continued resistance meant only more death. Cole looked at them with tired eyes. "Have you spoken to the people? Have you asked them what they want?" One advisor shook his head. "Sir, they are terrified. They are watching their defenders die." "Then perhaps you should listen more carefully." Cole walked to a communication terminal and opened a channel to every broadcast system on Earth. His face appeared on screens in every city, every town, every home where people huddled together and watched the end approach. "My fellow humans," he said, "you can see what is happening above us. Our fleet is falling. Our ships are dying. By every measure we have lost." He paused and let the words sink in. "But I want you to remember something. 300 years ago, our ancestors left this world in tiny ships held together with hope and prayer. They did not know if they would survive. They did not know what they would find in the darkness between stars, but they went anyway, because that is what we do. We reach for impossible things. His voice grew stronger. They have taken everything from other species. They have broken worlds and crushed civilizations, but they have never faced us. They have never faced a species that refuses to accept defeat. They have never faced humanity. He looked directly into the camera. Remember who we are. Remember what we have overcome. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We are the species that crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. We are humanity. We do not break. Across the planet, people listened, and something strange began to happen. On New Montana, Dr. Lisa Tran received word that the battle was lost. Her fleet of converted cargo ships was still 2 days away from Earth. Too far, too late. Everything they had built would arrive only to find ashes and ruin. But then she received a message from a freighter captain named George Miller. His voice was calm despite everything. Dr. Tran, we are pushing our engines past maximum. We might burn them out completely, but we are going to make it to Earth in time, all of us. Lisa stared at the message. George, if you push the engines that hard, you might not have enough power left to fight. Then we will ram the bastards, George replied. We did not come this far to watch from the sidelines. Similar messages came from across human space. Cargo ships and mining vessels and converted freighters, all of them pushing their engines to the breaking point. All of them racing toward Earth. All of them refusing to accept that the battle was over. Commander Danny Vance received the news aboard his stealth vessel. He was still deep in neutral space, escorting the fleet toward human territory. They were too far away. They would never make it in time. Saw the pain on his face. Your people are dying. Yes, Vance said quietly, and I cannot help them. The ancient placed a hand on his shoulder. You already have. You showed us that resistance is possible. You reminded us what it means to fight for something greater than survival. He turned to his officers and gave an order in the language. The fleet began accelerating, pushing their old ships faster than they had moved in centuries. We may not reach Earth in time to save your fleet, said, but we will reach it in time to avenge them. We'll learn that they have not defeated humanity. They have only awakened its allies. Above Earth, Commander Kate fought with everything she had left. Her fleet had shrunk to 41 ships. They were closing in on the planet, preparing for orbital bombardment. In minutes, they would begin burning cities and killing billions. Then her sensors detected something impossible. Thousands of new contacts were emerging from hyperspace. Small ships, civilian ships, ships that had no business being in a battle zone. Cargo haulers and mining platforms and converted freighters, all of them bristling with jury-rigged weapons. Lisa Tran's voice crackled across the communication channels. Terran military vessels, this is the civilian defense fleet. We heard you needed some help. Kate felt tears on her cheeks for the first time in years. Dr. Tran, your ships are not designed for combat. You will be slaughtered. Probably, Lisa replied. But we did not come here to survive. We came here to fight. Now stop wasting time and tell us where to aim. 4,000 civilian ships spread across the battlefield. They had no military training. They had no advanced weapons. Many of them would die in the first minutes of combat. But they had come anyway. They had crossed the stars to stand with their people. They had left their homes and their families to face an enemy that should have been impossible to defeat. The High Commander watched the new arrivals with growing unease. His forces still outnumbered the humans. His ships were still superior in every way, but something had changed, something he did not understand. His tactical officer spoke quietly. Commander, the human civilian vessels are broadcasting on all channels. They are sending the same message over and over. What message? The officer looked at his screen with an expression that might have been fear. They are saying we do not kneel. The second phase of the Battle of Saul was about to begin, and for the first time, they wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. The universe had never seen anything like what happened next. 4,000 civilian ships charged into the heart of the Armada. They were cargo haulers and mining vessels, freighters and transports, ships that had been built to carry grain and ore and the simple necessities of life between the stars. Now they carried weapons and fire and the desperate courage of a species that refused to die. Dr. Lisa Tran flew at the head of the civilian fleet in her converted hauler. The ship had been named the Pioneer by its original owners. It had spent 20 years moving equipment between mining colonies. Now it was about to fight the most powerful empire in galactic history. All civilian vessels, begin broadcasting the equalizer frequency, Lisa ordered. For 3 weeks, her team on New Montana had worked on a secret project. They had studied captured technology from the Battle of. They had analyzed the harmonics of enemy shields, and they had built a device that could disrupt those shields at their fundamental frequency. The equalizer signal spread across the battlefield like a wave. Ships that had been invincible moments before suddenly found their shields flickering and failing. The purple energy barriers that had protected them for 10,000 years began to collapse. High Commander watched in horror as his tactical displays filled with warning indicators. What is happening? What are they doing to our shields? His officers had no answer. This was not supposed to be possible. The shield technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. No species had ever found a way to counter it. No species had ever even come close. But humanity was different. Humanity did not fight like other species. Humanity solved problems that should have been unsolvable because they refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. Commander Kate saw the enemy shields failing and made a decision. All military vessels, full assault, hit them now while they are vulnerable. The 41 remaining warships of the Terran fleet surged forward. They were outnumbered, but the playing field had suddenly become more level. Weapons that would have bounced harmlessly off shields now struck exposed hulls. Torpedoes that would have been stopped cold now detonated against enemy armor. The battle became chaos. Civilian ships swarmed around cruisers like angry insects, firing their makeshift weapons from every direction. Military vessels targeted the largest enemy battleships, exploiting the gaps in their defenses. The disciplined formations broke apart as commanders struggled to adapt to tactics they had never encountered. George Miller, the freighter captain who had pushed his engines past their limits to reach Earth, found himself face to face with a destroyer. His ship had only 2 cannons, barely enough to scratch the enemy vessel, but he remembered what he had told Dr. Tran. "If we cannot shoot them, we will ram them," he muttered. The Pioneer-class freight hauler Salvation accelerated directly toward the destroyer. At the last moment, George and his crew triggered the emergency escape pods. The empty ship struck the enemy vessel at full speed, and both ships vanished in a ball of fire. George floated in his escape pod, watching the explosion fade. He had lost his ship, the vessel he had commanded for 15 years, but he had taken an enemy warship with him, and that was enough. Similar sacrifices happened across the battlefield. Civilian captains rammed their vessels into enemy ships. Crews stayed at their posts even as their hulls broke apart around them. Farmers and miners and teachers died beside trained soldiers, all of them united in a single purpose. The High Commander tried to rally his forces, but the situation was spiraling beyond his control. His fleet had expected an easy victory. Instead, they were fighting a nightmare. Then the sensors detected new contacts emerging from hyperspace. Commander Danny Vance led the Allied fleet into the battle zone. 300 warships, old but still deadly, opened fire on the rear guard. Behind them came vessels from a dozen other species, the broken and forgotten victims of Dominion conquest who had finally found the courage to fight back. Of the broadcast on all frequencies. This is of the remnant fleet. For 3 centuries we have hidden in the shadows. For 3 centuries we have dreamed of this moment. Today we remember what our ancestors taught us. Today we fight. The Allied ships tore into the formation from behind. The enemy armada was now trapped between human forces and a growing coalition of vengeful species. Their shields were failing. Their formations were broken. Their commanders were dying. High Commander stood on his crippled flagship and watched his fleet disintegrate around him. For the first time in his long career, he understood fear. Not the fear of death, but the fear of being wrong. The fear that everything he believed about the universe was a lie. They were supposed to surrender, he whispered. They were supposed to kneel. On the damaged ironclad, Admiral Sam regained consciousness. His bridge was a ruin of twisted metal and sparking wires. Most of his crew was dead, but through the cracked viewport he could see something incredible. The armada was breaking. Enemy ships were retreating, fleeing back toward the hyperspace jump point. Human and Allied vessels pursued them, firing until the last enemy signature disappeared from sensors. His voice was weak, but it carried across all remaining communication channels. All ships, this is Admiral. The enemy is in full retreat. We have won. A cheer erupted across the fleet. Soldiers and civilians, humans and aliens, all of them celebrating together. They had done the impossible. They had defeated the most powerful empire in galactic history. On Earth, Secretary General Cole watched the final moments of the battle from his bunker. His advisors stood around him in stunned silence. No one had believed this was possible. No one had dared to hope. "Sir," one advisor finally said, "what do we do now?" Cole smiled for the first time in weeks. "Now we rebuild. Now we honor our dead. And now we show the galaxy what humanity truly stands for." 3 days later, High Commander signed an unconditional surrender aboard a human space station. The Dominion, undefeated for 12,000 years, admitted defeat to a species that had only discovered fire a few 100,000 years ago. The Galactic Council demanded an explanation. Elder species who had watched humanity with condescension now looked at them with respect and fear. Everyone wanted to know how it had happened. Everyone wanted to understand. Cole stood before the council and spoke simply. "You declared war on our military. You expected to fight our ships and our soldiers, but you made a mistake that cost you everything. You did not declare war on a navy. You declared war on a species. Every farmer who flew a cargo ship into battle was fighting for their home. Every engineer who built weapons in a mining colony was fighting for their children. Every teacher who learned to fire a rifle was fighting for the future." He looked at the assembled representatives of 100 worlds. "We are humanity. We do not have the oldest civilization. We do not have the most advanced technology, but we have something you never understood. We have each other. And when you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us." 1 year later, Admiral Sam stood at the dedication ceremony for a new memorial on Earth's moon. The names of every human and alien who had died in the war were carved into black stone that would last forever. Dr. Lisa Tran stood beside him, now leading a new department dedicated to developing defensive technologies. Her equalizer had saved humanity, but she was already working on the next breakthrough. Commander Danny Vance had been promoted to captain. His allies had been given a new inhuman space, a gift from a grateful species to the friends who had stood with them in their darkest hour. Kate, now an admiral herself, commanded the rebuilt Terran fleet. It was larger and stronger than ever before, but more importantly, it was no longer alone. Allied species had joined humanity in a new coalition, a partnership of equals that would protect each other against any threat. And on New Montana, Dawson had retired from military service for good. She spent her days teaching children about the war, about the ordinary people who had become heroes, about the moment when humanity had faced extinction and chosen to fight. The thought we would surrender, she told her students. They thought we would kneel because we were young and weak and alone, but they forgot something important. They forgot that we are humanity. We do not give up. We do not give in. We do not break. She looked at the young faces watching her, the next generation who would carry humanity's spirit forward. They declared war on us, but we had other plans. The children smiled, and somewhere among the stars, the galaxy watched with new respect for the small blue world that had changed everything. Humanity had answered the call, and nothing would ever be the same again.